Hello there, guys. This is Miss Dixon. Today is Wednesday, April the 2nd, 2025. And I am so sorry that I am not there. I have woke up this morning not feeling very well. So I wanted to go ahead and get in the study guide video for y'all because we are still going to be taking our test. So I wanted to make sure that that video was posted for y'all so you can review it and get ready for your test on Module 17, dividing decimals. All right, so in front of you on the screen is our study guide, which is going to be Module 17B. And since this is only one module, we are going to go over, or the study guide will have all the questions that will primarily be on your test. There will be a few questions that are extra that are not posted on the study guide just to make sure you do completely understand all of the material. So we will be going over a select few of these study guide questions. Please make sure that you are reviewing everything and you don't just write down the answers because this is not a reciprocal test. That means that the answers are going to be the same. You can just memorize what the correct answer is and go ahead and not study for your test. You will have similar questions, so you have to know how to work them out. All right, let's start with number one, which I think is actually a fairly easy question, but I do want to go over some important steps in this question to make sure that you do understand what you need to do. So in this question, it says, how does the decimal point shift when dividing 825 by 10 to the power of 3? Let's first talk about the exponent number, which is going to be 10 to the power of 3. We know that when we have an exponent, it is, and the base number, the big number is 10. The exponent, the little number, is telling you how many zeros the number is going to have. This only works when your exponent base is 10. All right, so since our base is 10 and our exponent is 3, that means that this number or the product is going to have 3 zeros. All right, so that means it's 1,000. All right, since we have that under our belt, we know that we're going to be moving the decimal at least 3 places. So that can already eliminate A and C as possible answers because they're talking about moving the decimal 4 places. All right, since we are dividing by a whole number, in this case it's going to be 1,000 or 10 to the power of 3. You follow the same rules as when you multiply by a fraction or a decimal. So when you divide by a whole number or you multiply by a fraction or a decimal, remember the fraction or the decimal is a part, and we sing part of Beyonce. So that means, and I just spelled Beyonce wrong. Sorry, Beyonce. So that means we move to the left, to the left, to the left, to the left. So our decimal is going to shift 3 places to the left. Beyonce, fraction, decimal, divide by a whole number. To the left, so your correct answer, excuse me, is going to be D. You move to the right when you multiply by a whole number. Remember, you sing the whole first part of the Cupid Shuffle. To the right, to the right, to the right, to the right. Okay? Make sure you get all your notes from this. Remember, part of Beyonce, multiplying by a fraction, a decimal, or dividing by a whole number. All right, let's move to question number 3. Question number 2 on your study guide will not be posted on your test. So I'm not going to go over question number 2. Question number 3. Let's read what it says. Kelly earned $9.36 from recycling cans. All right, so looking at this problem, we see that she earns a total of $9.36. She is separating that $9.36 into 72-cent pounds. So we need to figure out how many pounds of cans did she recycle. So since we know how much she earns and how she's separating it, that is going to be a division problem. All right, so let's look at solving this division problem. Of course, first, you need to know which one is your dividend and which one is your divisor. Don't forget, the dividend is always going to be what you have or what is your total, and the divisor is going to be how it is separated or split. So in this case, we have a total of $9.36, and it is separated into groups of 72 cents per pound. So our dividend is going to be $9.36, $9.36, and it's going to be divided into 72-cent groups. All right, in solving this problem, we need to set it up in the house method for dividing. Remember, we need the house method because it helps us to get everything set up correctly. All right, so outside of the house is your divisor. That's going to be 72 cents. Inside of your house is going to be your dividend. That's going to be $9.36. Okay, the first thing we need to do is check our divisor. You cannot divide when you have a decimal in your divisor. Do we have a decimal in our divisor? We do. The decimal is right here. You have to move your decimal however many places it takes to get your divisor to be a whole number. That's going to be like we did in our workbooks, where we multiplied our divisor by whatever number made it a whole number. In this case, 100, because that's 2 zeros. What's the rule then? If you do it to the divisor, you have to do it to the dividend. So we have to multiply our dividend also by 100, which is going to shift that decimal also 2 places. Therefore, our new problem is going to be 72 as our divisor and 936 as our dividend. All right, go ahead and make your list to help you figure out what you want to divide by. For this one, I'm going to start with 10. That's going to give me 720. And if I look, 720 is actually not that far away from 936. So I think I'm going to start with 10. 720, subtract. 6 minus 0 is 6. 3 minus 2 is 1. And 9 minus 7 is 2. Can we stop? We cannot stop because 216 is more than 72. All right, can we take another 10 groups out? You are absolutely right. We cannot take another 10 groups out because that wouldn't have us subtracting 720, and you cannot subtract 720 from 216. Well, let's go back over to our list and try 5. Let's see what that gives us. 5 times 2 is 10. Regroup the 1. 7 times 5 is 35 plus 1 is 36. So 5 is too big because I cannot subtract 360 from 216. Let's try 4 because that's not too far off. All right, 4 times 2 is 8. 7 times 4 is 28. Still a little too big. So we're going to go to 3. Right? 2 times 3, 6. 7 times 3, 21. And 3 is just enough. So 3 is going to be my next partial quotient. That's 216. Subtract, and we get 0. To get your final quotient, you want to add up your partial quotients. 10 plus 3 is 13. And that's going to make my correct answer B. The biggest thing to remember with this one is that you have to make your divisor a whole number. And then however many places you move in your divisor, you also move that number in your dividend. You're not trying to make your dividend a whole number, just your divisor. All right, moving along, question number 4 is very similar to question number 1. The only difference is instead of telling what you're going to do, you're actually going to do it. Remember the rule that I gave you up here in question number 1. If you are multiplying by a fraction or a decimal or dividing by a whole number, you're doing Beyonce and you're moving to the left. The exponent is going to tell you how many places you're moving to the left because that controls how many zeros you have when your base is 10. Right? So number 4 should be very easy with those same instructions. So we are going to move on to question number 5. All right, question number 5 is a word problem. Let's read this word problem together. A dripping faucet loses 1 4/10 liters of water every hour. How many hours will it take for the dripping faucet to fill a 27 94/100 liter bucket? All right, in this problem, we are trying to get to a total of 37 94/100 liters. We are getting there by repeatedly dripping 1 4/10 liters of water. So if we write this problem like it's a multiplication problem, because we are trying to do repeated addition, we would have to say something times 1 4/10 equals 37 94/100. Remember, 37 94/100 is our total. So it wouldn't be 37 94/100 times 1 4/10. We're multiplying how many drops or how many hours it takes to drop 1 4/10 liters of water to fill the bucket. Since we can't solve it as a multiplication problem because we're missing one of our factors, we can switch it up into a division problem by using our fact families. So to switch it to a division problem, we take our product, and that becomes our dividend. Our sign becomes division. And our divisor is either one of our factors. Since we don't know one factor, let's make it the factor that we know. And our answer is going to be our variable, the unknown factor. Now that we have our division problem, let's go ahead and set it up. So that would be 1 4/10 on the outside and 37 94/100 on the inside. First thing you do is what? Check your divisor to see if there is a decimal. There is a decimal, so we have to move that decimal to the end to make it a whole number. However many spaces you moved your decimal in your divisor, move the exact same number of spaces in your dividend. Then we're going to bring our decimal in our dividend straight up. Don't forget, you move it only the number of places you move it in your divisor. Since we moved our decimal in our divisor one space, we're going to move our decimal in our dividend one space. All right, now let's rewrite our problem the way it is so that we can solve it. See if I can get some more space somewhere right down here. All right, so that's 14 as your divisor and 379 4/10 as your dividend. Don't forget that decimal. All right, since we have a multi-digit divisor, let's start our list. Okay, Let's see, how about we start with 100? Because I see I'm trying to get to 3,794 because we're going to think of it as a whole number. All right, that's going to be 1,400. Close, but we might can go bigger. Let's try 200. Okay, I need 2 zeros. 4 times 2 is 8. 1 times 2 is 2. Much better. Let's just try 300 just to see where we are. 2 zeros. 4 times 3 is 12. 1 times 3 is 3, plus 1 is 4, and that's too big. So that means 200 is a good start. Don't forget, when you are writing this, you want to keep your numbers aligned so that that decimal that we are bringing up stays where it needs to be. So I put the 2 over the hundreds place if this was a whole number, the 0 over the tens if it was a whole number, and the other 0 over the ones as if it was a whole number. Right? We already know that that's 2,800. Subtract 4, 9. Got to regroup that one. That is 17 minus 8, 9. All right, we can't stop because our remainder is more than our divisor. And we can't take another 100, 200 groups out or 100 groups out because that's too big. So let's try 50 groups. All right, we need 1 0. 4 times 5 is 20. Regroup that too. 5 times 1 is 5 plus 2 is 7. 700 is good. So let's take out 50. Don't forget to bring your decimal up. All right, I'm going to erase this up here because we've already used that. And I need some more. I know I'm going to need some more space. All right, subtract. And that's 4, 9, 2. Yeah, all right. Still need to keep going. Let's go to our list. And let's try, how about 20 groups? Right? 1 0. 4 times 2 is 8. 1 times 2 is 2. Wow, that's really close. So I think we're going to do 20 groups. Don't forget to keep bringing that decimal up to 80. Okay, that's going to be 4 and 1. Wow. We have 14 as our remainder. All right, so how many, can we stop? You are absolutely right. We cannot stop because our remainder is not less than our divisor. Remember, the remainder has to be less than the divisor. So we can take out one more group. Remember, you want to make sure that you are lining up because that decimal has to stay there. So the decimal comes up and we're taking one more out. And that's going to be 14. And your remainder becomes 0. All right, to get your answer, you want to add up all of your partial products. So that's going to be 1/10 plus 2 plus 5 plus 20. And that's going to be 1/10. And then 2 plus 5 is 7 and 2. So your answer is B. 27 and 1/10 hours. All right, moving on. For questions 6, 7, and 8, we have done 2 division problems. So I'm not going to go over those. I will remind you that if you have a decimal in your divisor, like all 3 of these problems do, you want to move your decimal to turn it into a whole number. Once it is turned into a whole number, then you can just solve, then you move your decimal and your dividend the same number of places and then solve. The biggest thing you have to remember with dividing decimals is that you cannot keep the decimal in your divisor. You must change it to a whole number. All right, let's move on to question number 9. In question number 9, we need to write an equation that matches the visual model that they have given us. So let's start off with this side because this is our total. So that's going to be your dividend. And then this over here is going to be our divisor and our quotient. All right, so let's start with the dividend. I see that I have one whole box completely shaded in. So that's going to be one whole. And then I have an additional 5/10 of a whole box shaded in. So that's going to be 5/10. All right, and we are separating or splitting this one whole and 5/10, so that's division, into thirds in 5 groups. So that can either be 1/3, 3/3, because it's 3, Lord have mercy, 3/10, because it's 3/10 and they're separated into 5 groups. You can also say that it is 5 groups of 3/10. Both equations are valid. When you are looking at your visual model, you want to take what's shaded all together, which is this part, that's your dividend. And then how is it separated is your divisor and your quotient. That's why we were able to say 3/10 could be the the divisor, and 5 could, because it's 3/10, and 5 could be your quotient because there's 5 groups. Or you could say 5 groups is your divisor, and you have them in 3/10. All right, let's move on to our next page. All right, for question number 10, you are trying to fill in the blank to make the equation true. I'm going to start off with the second one. That's going to be this one because that one is a little bit easier for you, or I think it is. All right, so remember, we are dividing by a whole number. So when you divide by a whole number, you're singing part of Beyonce to the left, to the left. So your decimal is going to move to the left. How many places to the left is it going to move? So when you are dividing by that whole number, we're going to move to the left the number of zeros or the exponents. So 170, we would move to the left 3 places. So that would be 1, 2, 3, which is going to put our decimal in the front. So our answer will be 170,000. 170,000. You could also put 1,700. Both of those are equivalent. All right, moving up to the first example or the first problem, because they have given us our answer, we need to think of this as if we could rewrite it as a multiplication problem. Okay, so use your fact family knowledge, and we're going to say 1 7/7 times 10 to the power of 2 equals, because we're rewriting it like a multiplication problem. So that means we are multiplying by a whole number. When you multiply by a whole number, you sing the whole Cupid shuffle beginning. To the right, to the right, to the right, to the right. So our decimal is going to move to the right 2 places. So that's 1, 2. You can't jump nothing, so you have to put a 0. So your answer ends up being 170. All right, again, I am reminding you, you have to write down how to solve these problems so you know what to study. All right, moving on. Looking at question number 11 in our study guide. For question number 11, you are trying to fill in the sentences to make the statement true. All right, let's read what it says. Store A has 6 cans of soup on sale for $8.76. Store B has 7 cans of soup on sale for $9.10. Which store has the better sale on soup? To solve this problem, we will have to figure out how much each individual can of soup would be if we bought it at store A or store B. Whichever one costs the least for each individual can, that store would have the better deal. I'm going to solve one of them for you. You're going to solve the other one and then fill in the missing letters, the missing words for your answer. All right, let's start with store A. Store A, let me see if I can get some more space. Okay, come down here. So store A has 6 cans at $8.76. So we are going to be spending a total of $8.76, split into 6 different cans. Right? So that's going to be a division problem. So let's set our problem up. All right. First check your divisor, which is 6. See if there is a decimal in that divisor. There is not a decimal in the divisor, so we are going to simply keep our decimal in our dividend and bring it straight up. I'm going to rewrite this problem so that it's a little bit easier for us to solve. All right, so let's rewrite it. We're going to keep our dividend, our divisor, and we're going to separate our dividend out, keeping the decimal in play with a little bit of space so we can have room to write. All right, let's start with our first set of numbers. That's 8 divided by 6. How many times can you take 6 out of 8? One time. 1 times 6 is 6. Subtract, and I get 2. The decimal will stay where it is, and I'm going to bring the 2 up to the 7. How many times can I take 6 out of 27? 4 times. 6 times 4 is 24. Subtract, I get 3. Bring the 3 up to the 6. Whoops, not a 6, a 3. How many times can I take 6 out of 36? 6 times. 6 times 6 is 36. Subtract, and I get 0. All right, looking at your answer, store A sells each can for $1.46. All right, looking back at our problem and how you would fill out your answer, if store A had the cheaper price per can, you would write store A has the better sale since each can would be $1.46. But I want you to solve for store B and make sure that store A actually does have the better deal. Follow the example that I did for store A to solve store B. All right, for question number 12, you are reading the problem and solving. You must write an equation to solve this problem. And guys, please, on your test, when it says write the equation, please write the equation. All right, we're going to come back to question number 13. I want to move over to question number 14 really quick. Question number 14, you are dividing or multiplying, whoops, by a 10 base number, 100. So really, you're only looking at moving that decimal either to the left or to the right. For question number 15, pay attention to the fact that part A says write the equation, and part B says to solve or give the answer to the equation. For part A, I will be accepting variables as your answer in your equation. But for part B, you do have to get the correct answer. All right, I want to move on back to question number 13. And we're going to look at that one, and then that's going to be it for the study guide. All right, let's read the problem. George needs 44 feet of border to put around his flower bed. Each section of border measures 3 2/10 feet. How many sections of border does George need? All right, so let's work out this problem. The total that we need is 44 feet. We are putting it in sections of 3 2/10 feet. To figure out how many total sections he needs, we are going to need to divide. Your total or your dividend is 44. Dividing that into 3 2/10 sections. All right, let's reset up our problem so that we can solve. Divisor is 3 2/10 divided by 44 or into 44. Check your divisor. Do you have a decimal in your divisor? Yes, so we have to move that decimal to the end of our divisor, turning it into a whole number. However many places you moved it in your divisor, you also have to move it in your dividend. So that's going to be one place. But I don't see a decimal in my dividend. So that means it's already at the end, and I need to move it one place, which means I'm going to need to add a 0. All right, let's rewrite our problem one more time with our equivalent dividend and divisor. So that's 32 as your divisor and 440 as your dividend. All right, let's get started to solving. Let's make our list. All right, 32 times 10. And that's 320, which I think is a really good start. So I'm going to start with 10. Subtract. That's 0. 4 minus 2 is 2. 4 minus 3 is 1. All right, we can't stop, so we have to keep going. Can't do another 10 groups, so let's try 5. 5 times 2 is 10. 3 times 2 is 15, plus 1 is 16. So that's too much. Let's try 3. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 3 is 9. That would work. So we're going to take out 3 groups. All right, 0 minus 6 we cannot do. So we have to regroup. That becomes 4. Regroup again. That becomes 11. So we end up with 34. All right, our remainder is not less than our divisor. So we have to keep going. Oh, wait, I subtracted wrong. That's supposed to be 2. Okay, so our remainder is less than our divisor. But if you remember, I told y'all if you're working with decimals, you cannot stop with the remainder. You have to keep going until you do not have a remainder. So we have to add a 0 to the end of our dividend. Remember, the decimal is here because we brought it to the end. So we add a 0, bring that 0 down. So now we're dealing with 240. All right, I know that 32 times 5 is 160. Let's see if we can get a little bit closer. Let's try 32 times 7. I'm going to do 7. Right? 3 times 2 is 14. Sorry, 7 times 2 is 14. 3 times 2 is 21. Plus 1 is 22. And that's much closer. So I'm going to do 7. Don't forget, we have a decimal that we're bringing up. So that's 224. Subtract. And that's 4. And that's 2. All right, and I made another mistake. So I messed up right here. Nope, I can't do that. So that is 3 and 10. That's much better. Okay, 6 and 1. All right. So I still have a remainder in my decimal. So that means I have to what? Add another 0. Bring that 0 down. Right now, so 32 goes into 160. Right? So we take 32 times, let's see, it can't be 7 because 7's too big. Oh, wait, we already had 5. It's 160. So that would be 5. Don't forget you're bringing that decimal up. That 5 needs to go over the 0 that we added. So we need to put zeros in the empty spaces. That would be 160. And we have 0. All right, so to get our answer, we would take 500 plus 7/10 plus 3 plus 10 and we get 5, 7. Bring down your decimal. 3 and 1. So that would be your final answer. He needs 13 and 75/100 sections. All right, guys, please remember, first of all, I'm sorry about the mistakes. I am not feeling well while I'm doing this, as I told y'all, so I'm not all here. But please make sure that you are reviewing your study guide. You want to make sure that you are actually studying it. Your book bag, your desk, your parents' car, the school bus, the trash can. They're never going to pass. Please use your study guide to study. Please use your study guide to study. Please use your study guide to study. If you have any questions, please reach out to me either by email or before we start our test on tomorrow. I hopefully we'll be able to be there. All right, guys, I will see you later. Keep practicing and having fun with math.